Hey everyone, Marcus from Live Life Your Way, starting this week's podcast video. Basically, we're going to have a chat with you about milk. I did a web blog a little while ago about milk substitutes, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about that. We're going to take that a little bit further. If you guys want to ask any questions, if you guys want to get involved in a bit of a chat about that, that would be great. But basically I did a blog on the website, and you can pop onto the website www.livelifeyourway.net.au, have a bit of a read of that, but I want to have a bit of a chat about it and take it a little bit further. My discussion was about milk and non-dairy substitutes. What's better, what works, what doesn't work, what's really healthy for you, what's not. And in that, we had a bit of a talk about the myths concerning milk. And I initially started talking about milk substitutes first. So a lot of everyone's favorite milk substitute is soy milk. Soy and almond seem to be the popular milk replacements lately. Not sure why. Look, I understand that some people have a dairy intolerance. Great. You're going to need to go to that replacement. But if you're looking at it from a low-fat alternative, you need to really consider what's actually in that milk substitute. So let's have a quick look at that. Let's start off with soy milk. Yes, coffee with milk. Let's have a look at soy milk. So when I originally did this blog, I looked at a couple of particular brands. The brandings are noted in the blog. All my references in the blog, I actually do quote where I've referenced all my data from. So everything's cross-referenced, double-checked. One of the things about soy milk is that proper soy milk is actually supposed to be a byproduct of the manufacture of tofu. But modern day soy milks that you buy on the shelf aren't necessarily that. They've only got about 13% soybeans in them. But you also need to be aware that it doesn't list sugar as an ingredient on the product list, but it doesn't have to list the glucose in its different form and its varied forms if it's not listed as sugar. So soy milk has rice syrup in it. But also you've got to consider what rice syrup's made of. Rice syrup is made up of 3 different glucose type sugars: maltose, maltose, and glucose. Don't be fooled by those names. Basically, maltose is just 2 glucose molecules, and maltose is 3 glucose molecules. So your rice syrup in your soy milk is basically got a stack of added glucose, which is sugar. But because it doesn't say it's directly sugar, it is classified as a glucose type liquid. It doesn't have to list that on the ingredients. So you're got to be really careful about what you're actually drinking in terms of that retail available soy milk. I've also looked at almond milk in this blog. Now, almond milk's a tricky one because, again, your commercially available almond milk isn't necessarily what they like to consider it as. They state it being 98% fat-free, and that's great. It has no fat in it. But there's also hardly any almond in it. It also states no added sugars. That's great, but you need to consider what they're using to thicken it to give it that milk-like texture, because basically you've got ground almonds and water. So how are they turning it into that milk texture? What do they use? They use a tapioca flour predominantly, which is, yes, while it's gluten-free, it is a starchy product. And starch is a problem because it's a complex carbohydrate made up of a stack of sugar molecules again. So your soy milk, your almond milk, they've got added sugar molecules in them at a base level glucose form, so they don't have to add it on the ingredients list as sugar per se. So you've got to consider what's in some of these commercially available products. And in most quantities of almond milk and your UHT almond milk and your packaging, you're usually only looking at about 2.5% almonds in that product anyway. If you're looking at a homemade product, or if you're looking at an organically made product, that's different. But consider the fact that they're not actually milk. It's really just a soy or an almond drink. There is another milk alternative, rice milk. Rice milk's quite common in a lot of Asian countries because it's made from rice grain, which is extremely obviously common and popular all over the world. Compared to cow's milk though, rice milk does contain a lot more carbs, but it also has a lot less calcium and protein. So again, if you've got a particular dietary requirement where you can't have the dairy, and you're going to go for a milk alternative, consider the fact that yes, rice milk is 98% fat-free with no preservative, which are great, but you're dropping your protein and calcium amounts dramatically, so you're going to need to supplement that somewhere. The one bonus of rice milk over almond and soy is that it doesn't have the added sugars that almond and soy have in those base glucose molecules that I was just talking about. So that's a huge benefit. You're not going to get that sugary carb spike when drinking the product, and it is going to be a little bit healthier for you in that case. However, it does have a little bit more salt than some of the other products. So again, look at your packaging, look at your product listing, consider what's in some of these, have a read of the blog on the website, and it'll be going into a lot more detail on some of these things. Coconut milk is a really, really good alternative. Coconut milk is really awesome in that it's going to give those benefits of coconut oil and coconut products in terms of helping your body remove some starches. I always suggest to any of my clients that if you're going to be cooking pasta or rice, throw some coconut oil in the water, because that will basically stop the body or assist the body in reducing the starch processing. So rice and pastas predominantly, especially white pastas, have a lot of starch in them. So if you add in that coconut oil into the water while you're cooking those, it helps the body become a little bit more resistant to the starch in the products, and you don't process them as much. So your coconut milk is great in that it's going to have that coconut oil in it. Packaging on these is going to be different on every brand. Keep that in mind. Coconut milk's basically made from coconut cream though, and they don't have to state that on the packaging, so you need to be aware of this. Coconut cream, when you buy coconut cream in a tin, and in most forms, it's going to be thickened. So the thickening agent used in coconut cream is a starch. So again, we go back to those glucose molecules again. Yes, it's thinned out from coconut cream to make a coconut milk, but it all depends on how much you're wanting to watch those glucose, that sugar intake coming in. Other than that, coconut milk's actually not too bad. The coconut oil can be a little bit oily and a little bit higher in saturated fats, but it's actually good fats, so it's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Again, more detail on that on my blog on the website. There is another milk product called Like Milk. It's made by a company called Australia's Own. I'm not too sure if I like that particular branding. Australia's Own seems to be a homemade brand coming through predominantly in Coles supermarkets of UHT style milks. They're packaged from Australian milk, which is great, but the branding itself is actually a US owned brand. So I'm a little bit funny about that particular brand. That's me personally, because it's all about those profits going overseas rather than staying within the country. But this Like Milk is made from a pea protein isolate. So it's a bit like drinking pea protein in a shaker at the gym, which is fine in itself because it's a very high protein. So it's very high protein, the Like Milk, but we need to think about what's in it. So if you've ever drunk pea protein isolate at the gym, it tastes like crap. It's basically like drinking dirt. So to make this palatable, make this product palatable, again, they've had to resort to adding things in. So we've added in, actually outright said, they've added in sugar, cocoa powder, which is going to have more glucose in it as well. So flavors, they've added in artificial sweeteners as well. And again, more stabilizers, which are going to be in the form of starches. So to make this pea protein drink, which is like milk, palatable, they've added in a whole heap of sugar. So look, while it's an alternative to whole milk, which is great, wow, we've added in a stack of sugar just to make this drinkable. And then you've still got the fact that it's pea protein, which again, there's only 3.3% protein per 100 mils. So yeah, you're better off just drinking pea protein in a shaker while you're at the gym. So those are your alternatives. We'll skip back over them again. Your alternatives are going to be your soy milk, your almond milk, rice milk, coconut milk, and this like milk. Then we talk about, okay, my blog then goes on to actually start talking about proper natural cow's milk. One thing that people don't seem to realize is that natural cow's milk is the closest thing to our human milk anyway. And our bodies have been drinking it for thousands of years. We've been farming natural animal milks into our bodies for years. The only time a person can't drink it is when they're going to have a dairy intolerance or a milk intolerance anyhow. Some of those intolerances basically a lactose intolerance. That's going to be a whole separate discussion, because lactose-free milk isn't really lactose-free. It's normal milk with those enzymes added that your human body doesn't produce to be able to break down that lactose. So the whole packaging on that is worded really wrong, but that's a whole separate discussion for another day. Look, while advertising tells you, oh, you want low-fat milk, all that sort of stuff, natural cow's milk really only has 2.3% polyunsaturated fats and 28% monounsaturated fats, which in contrast to trans fats in processed foods and some of the products that we've already looked at, they're actually beneficial fats. They're good fats. There is such thing as a good fat and bad fat. There's not just fats. There are actually good fats. I mean, we're told eat avocados because the fats in the avocados are good for you. But they're still fats, so why aren't we saying don't eat fatty foods? It gets really complicated, and we'll probably do a conversation about fats at a later stage. Yes, there are some carbs in full-fat dairy milk. They are simple sugar, lactose, and they're a natural enzymatic byproduct. Really simple. Looking at the cow's milk, in the blog that I've written, I look at actually UHT milk. The biggest reason why I look at UHT milk, I'm a big proponent of UHT milk, because how many times do you buy milk from the supermarket and 2 or 3 days later it's already gone off even before it's used by date, because you do not know how that milk's been transported. It's supposed to be refrigerated, but by the time they take it off the truck, load it into the dock, it sits in the dock for 5 to 10 minutes before they even put it back in their chillers. Then they've got to transport it from the chillers to the floor display, which can take 20 minutes. So that milk is losing temperature in multiple points. Plus you've got to transport it from that chiller to the register, to your car, to your house. So there's no way that date's actually going to be accurate. I know, I was a supermarket manager. I've been there, done that. So I tend to trust UHT milk. Plus the UHT processing tends to remove a lot of bacteria in the milk to make it a little bit safer anyway. Plus, and it's going to sit on your shelf for months. You're going to be safe with it. Fats in full cream UHT milk, 100% cow's milk, 3.3% fat. What are you worried about? Okay, if you're worried and you're on a diet, that 100 ml glass of full cream milk is only 3.3% fat. Whoop-de-doo. It's not going to bother you. You've got an alternative of skim milk and light milk, but you've got to consider what's in them. Again, they need to have the same taste and consistency as full cream milk. Skim milk is different. It's basically milk that is settled and they've skimmed the fat off the top, so that's great. If you want that lower fat percentage, you really need that lower fat percentage. Light milk is different, however, because they add thickeners to it. And the thickeners they put in are basically, we're back to that starchy thickening agent with glucose molecules again. Plus, you've also got to consider that the light milk is usually made from a milk powder first, so that they thicken it that way. And the downside to that is milk powder is usually made with oxidized cholesterol, which is a carcinogen. So, simply, full cream dairy milk, unless you have a dairy intolerance that you require to go to a particular non-dairy product. And then then basically you just need to look at it a little bit in depth. Yeah, I'm talking a bit about this and I'm going on about it, but have a little bit of a read of the blog on the website, livelifeyourway.net.au. Have a look at the milk comparison. It is a big write-up. Again, it shows all the data. Look, what you drink is your choice. I can only educate you on the subject. The way I look at it is we want to have the best informed decision that we can have to be the healthiest we can be. And if I can help you guys make a more educated decision on that, bonus. I basically just drink full cream UHT milk. I'm no kid, but I'm also not fat. If you are on a weight loss issue, full cream milk is not going to be too much of an issue because they're good fats in the milk anyhow. It's only 3.3% fat, and the fats in whole cream, full cream dairy milk, cow's milk, they're fats that our body's going to use. Okay, as I talked about, there are good fats and bad fats. Most of your bad fats are usually processed foods anyway. If you really are concerned about the fat content, okay, go to a skim milk, but consider the fact that it's made from the factory with a milk powder. It's not actually, majority of the time, especially if it's UHT, it's going to be made from a milk powder and then turned into a liquid and put back into a packaging, which is why they usually tell you to shake it. But unless you've got a dairy intolerance, stick with just full cream dairy milk and just consider your quantity and how much milk you're drinking. Most of your fat issues are going to come in regards to consumption are going to come from other sources of foods anyway, really. If you have a balanced diet, if you have a good exercise regime, if you're keeping yourself active and healthy and considering what you eat, then it's not going to be too much of an issue. Really, you're not going to have an overwhelming intake of fat. But yeah, have a read of the blog. As I said, it gives you all references as well. It also gives out specific breakout references in terms of explaining a lot of what I've written in the blog. So yeah, have a look on the website, livelifeyourway.net.au. Any questions, drop a message here. Have a look at us on Facebook, have a look at us on Instagram, and hopefully we'll see you on the next blog.